Good evening. The school committee workshop session of October 15, 2025 will now come to order. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available for viewing on the Methuen Public Schools website. I'll ask the secretary of the school committee to call the roll.
Member DeZoglio. Member Donovan.
Here.
Member Keegan.
Here.
Member Maxwell. Member Shabilia, present. Member Willett. Yep. Mayor Beauregard.
Here, we have a quorum, and we are off to the races. We need a motion and a second to accept the agenda for tonight's meeting as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motions from Member Shabilia, the seconds from Member Donovan. Discussion?
Could I make a
Vice
motion
Chair.
to amend the agenda to add public participation?
I'll second that.
Okay. So we're going to officially add public participation. I think that's fair and appropriate. All those in favor of the proposed amendment, say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. We need a motion and a second to,
Who made the motion?
oh, excuse me, Vice Chair made the motion. The second was from Member Willett. So at this point, we need a motion and a second to accept the agenda now as amended.
So moved. Second.
Motion from Member Donovan, second from the Vice Chair. Any further discussion? If not, we'll vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. I will now rise for the flag salute. And now on to the traditional placement of public participation. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak? If not, I'll close public participation, or would you like to speak?
No, I
No.
just said hello.
Oh, okay. All right, so we'll close public participation. If you cannot make a meeting in person for public participation, you can send an email to Susan Shanti at snscionti@methuen.k12.ma.us before 3 p.m. on the day of the school committee meeting. The only thing we really have on the agenda is the discussion regarding the school audit. This is the beginning of our follow-up efforts and a discussion regarding possible goals. I will turn it over to the superintendent, and we will proceed to engage in discussion from that point.
Thank you. So I passed out a packet that is not new information, but some things that I have done to the information that we received from the audit company. And so I think for me, being tasked with all the things I have heard about this audit along the way was that whatever the outcomes were, we were going to take outcomes to figure out what we could do to move forward and progress. And then in this group in particular, it was what could we use to then add to my own goals, right? So tonight is really focused on the district-wide recommendations for consideration, because that pertains specifically to me. And what we do this evening will really model what will happen in the schools. So if that makes sense for everybody, right? So the team knows that this is happening this evening. They know that my goals will be spoken about. And then our team, our principals, the staff here with Ms. Bozak and Ms. Golubsky and Mr. Gosselin, we've all sort of talked about next steps. So I hope that makes sense. I did meet with the task force last week to make sure I was on the right path forward of what the expectations were from the mayor, Member Shabilia, and Member Donovan. So this is what we talked, this is the outcome of what we talked about in that meeting. So what you have here is, there is a key on the front page. So I color-coded the boxes that are attached. Now, everything in the boxes on these charts, I very much appreciate. Jared sent me the actual PowerPoint so I could copy and paste and manipulate the information. So I took everything from Methuen Public School District, so the main sort of themes, right? Again, these are not the school-related recommendations that the principals will do with their team, just like we're doing here tonight. So going through that, I put the titles on the left-hand side of sort of what was highlighted in bold by the CBIZ folks. And then the bullets, so the black dot bullets in the boxes are exactly written from the auditors. That's not my language, those are not my bullets. What are my bullets are the hollow ones underneath it. So what I did is went through each one of those sections and just added some notes, because I think one thing that was a little bit hard is that some of these are very general, they're not very specific to, you know, Methuen Public Schools specifically, or what we have done, what we need to do, where we are. So I put some notes in all of these boxes. Some have more notes and some don't have a lot of notes. So when I did that, I then color-coded everything with three things in mind. You know, what items are budget-related and would not appropriately be something that I could control completely as a goal, but certainly something that is there and would be most likely part of the financial goal I do have, right, in conversation. The pieces that are in that yellowish color, that straw color, those for me, I defined as things that were in process, right? So there are definitely pieces of these different goals that, or recommendations for consideration that we do have sort of in place at this point. Obviously, the last two boxes are pretty filled with some of the stuff with the building maintenance issues. So I tried to add as much detail to that of what we have been doing since, you know, last year and through the summer and definitely this fall and where we are today. Covered sort of a lot of those different bullet items. So those for me were more of like what's in process. Yes, there's still some things to be done there, but those are already on our radar and exist somewhere in our conversations. I don't know if that makes sense, if I said that appropriately, but that's sort of how my brain was thinking of it. And then the pieces that are in blue are the ones that stood out to me as sort of the stronger common themes that really could be added to my current goals or created new ones. And so for those, the blue at the top, the first one, improved communication and administrative responsiveness, I think there was a pretty strong theme in all 6 schools regarding that we could all focus on. The feedback and recognition for staff, that was another one that was, there's a newness to that for us that we talk about, but we don't have a consistent, I'd say, plan or strategy for in our buildings and the district. Approach, yeah, thank you. And then the last one that we're hearing loud and clear that the principals, several principals and I have already talked about at some level are the discipline policies and the bullying policies. I think there's, that one in particular is twofold. I did not write a lot of bullets on that one, particularly because this is one that I think would be really important to dive in with the principals, Mr. Crocker, Andrea, all the people involved to really kind of create what that would look like. And some of that is, for that particular item, I think there's and Ms. Bozak and I have already talked about it, like, so we've been having these conversations for the past week or so about some of these, this one in particular. You know, there's, some of it is how we're communicating out this information, right? We have bullying policies, we have discipline policies. How are we making sure it's being implemented consistently? That's something I've heard from you all in this audit, right? So that is something that the principals and I have already been talking about, but we can structure that a little more closely. And then I think just the education aspect for our families, for our students, about how we define bullying, how we don't define bullying, what happens. There seems to be a very widespread misunderstanding that if something is not substantiated as bullying, the schools don't do anything about it. And we keep having to like backpedal, and just because it's unsubstantiated doesn't mean that something's not happening with the school, meeting plans or discipline or the such. So I think there's benefit to having some deeper conversations there from everything that I have heard. So for me, I think those 3 places are really feasible and can generate a couple of new goals for me. but also, and drive some of the goals for the principals. And also, I do think one in particular, so on the back page of this presentation, I just quickly summarized sort of where my thoughts were on the goals. So I already have a goal in the document that we shared a few weeks ago about the school partnerships and families and engagement. So the two bullets at the bottom there that are highlighted are, I think, could fit there. They're from this particular audit and recommended for the communication. And I think they could, like I said, I think they could fit there. I don't think they would have to be a separate goal. But the second two, the feedback for recognition for staff and the discipline and bullying policies, I think there's some work that we can do there around communication, definitions, consistencies that could create a new goal with new action plans. So I know that was like really quickly talked about, but that, again, I believe that was the task that the school committee put in front of me with the audit, that I would take this information and do, make it productive and make it effective and move forward. There are 7 months left of this school year, so I'm also trying to be what can be accomplished in that time, and I think we could get some really good things accomplished with increasing communication, and we might be standing on our heads, trying to figure out better ways to engage with families, but it is a two-way street, right? We need families to engage with us. We keep putting stuff out there. I have, I think, 3 principals now doing different coffees, and just, people don't show up, right? So there's just, how do we better engage? And I think we've tried a lot of things, but we're willing to kind of go back to the table and figure out other ways, right? So that's, again, that was quick. I don't know if you want me to go like section by section in the bullets I wrote. I don't know how you want to proceed. And again, we can do that, understanding that like this was just finalized today and handed to you today. We can go through sort of each section that I have in yellow as like, how are we progressing? I'm happy to do it, and if we stop at each one, I don't know how you guys want me to proceed. I'm happy to do it anyway.
I just have a thought, and then we'll entertain questions. I think that, first of all, I very much appreciate how well laid out this document is, where it's incorporating the recommendations from the audit, but then indicating, I guess that in a level of detail that provides that triage effect, where we're able to address the things that we can do in the here and now, the things that are going to be longer term goals. So I appreciate the way that that's laid out, and I look forward to the discussion. I think it makes sense to tackle the things that we plan on doing, that are already in process, or the things that are tangible in terms of this year, maybe diving deeper into that. Member Shabeli, did you have a question?
Yes. So something that has come to me more times than I can count at this point is the engagement that parents and some teachers have with building admin. And I know that those were put into the individual schools.
Right.
But for me, it's something that should be looked at holistically, even though it looks at individual schools. So I know it wasn't in this section, and I understand and fully appreciate what you did and the logic that got us here, but can we find a way to kind of like scoop all that up and make it our own overarching district view a goal?
Yeah, I think the first one, the improved communication and administrative responsiveness, is where that would fit. So if I look, I didn't use the individual school recommendations for this, right, this task to get this complete for today, but I can, to make that.
No, I mean,
sort of
that
a
to me
broader-
is the one big issue. I mean, I think it was 3 out of 4 schools.
Right, the
So
staff to student, yeah.
It was staff to administration, then it was teachers, parents, and
Teachers to
teachers, and
yeah.
the whole
Yep,
gambit
triangle.
of relationship. So seeing that it was 3 out of 4, I understand why the auditors didn't put it on the overarching list.
Yep.
But for us, that one school
Yep.
can always benefit from a little bit more reinforcement. It's not going to hurt them.
No.
That's all I've got. Thank you.
Member Maxwell?
I mean, do you want, it's
I'm
at the will of the
yeah.
committee how you want me to proceed.
It's simpler the better. I'm in favor of just going, just straight.
It's not that,
yeah.
it's not that many
Yeah.
boxes, and we can stop, and I think for that content, that would be, if there are questions, we can stop at each one. Ms. Donovan, do you, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not the chair. So sorry.
I'm
Okay.
so sorry.
So as we look at improving communications, this is the one thing I was trying to figure out. Excuse me. Do you, is there a counter on the newsletters? The people, how many people are looking at the Friday night newsletters? There is. I thought there was,
There's a counter on the pages, yeah.
and I think I see it when I click on. I see a number on the right hand, and it's abysmal. Absolutely, I mean, if I'm right, I saw like 43 at one school. And I don't know if that's you're clicking on, as I would, through the website, because I don't get the email, or,
The person that created the newsletter can see the views. It's
Yeah.
usually in the hundreds.
okay, and still, that's
Still
not
not,
that great.
right.
I'm just wondering if that could be part of our data. I mean, we're pushing, it's supposed to be, you're pushing the information out, but is anyone, what's the effect of it if no one's reading it?
I
that's
don't
where
disagree with you. So I think
Yeah.
part of this is saying, we know what we already do, right? We're pushing information out. We have information on our website. We're
Yep.
pushing out talking points, but I can't make people read it and understand it and respond to it, right? So how, this is what I'm saying about
Yep,
kind of
I
standing on
know.
our heads a little bit, right? We have some principals who have already
Yep,
doing like, let's do coffee hours, whether it's in the afternoon or morning. I know the Timony's starting to do that, and like 3 people showed up. And it's the same 3 people, right? Like there's, and Rebecca's done that at the Marsh, so, and it's a very casual, they do it in the cafeterias or the media centers with some coffee, right? So it's supposed to be meant to like, just come and have a conversation, right? There's no computers, but, and that could be just a culture. We have to like change that's a come and just talk, right? Come and just visit. So that might take time to change because we don't always do that, right?
we've been doing it for years.
I know, but we haven't always, I think sometimes parents don't want to walk in because they think it's not just going to, there's a gotcha somewhere.
Oh, I see.
You know what I
I see.
mean?
Yeah,
So like,
yeah.
how do we change that mindset that you can just come in and, whether it's for 10 minutes or an hour, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just have a conversation about whatever, my own child or a program, or how do we
I
get
don't-
recommendations for high school? I mean, there's just different things I think that people can.
Well, I will share that yesterday I had a parent say that she was really disappointed that she's getting so many talking points, and sometimes late at night, and, so I wonder if it's worth, as we've done in the past, looking at some numbers to say, are we just doing this, like the Friday emails, and not having a good feedback and find another way? I don't want to create more work at this stage in the game, but,
I mean, we have the data and talking points about who it went to. I don't think we can see who's read it.
yeah.
Can we see who's read it and talking about? Oh, because then we can see who.
And the newsletters. I just don't know. I mean, if there's something totally different to try. I mean,
And this is an ebb and flow, right? Because we
Right.
used to do the Friday or the Sunday calls way back when, and people were starting to get irate about receiving the phone calls, so we stopped the phone calls, and we were able to switch over to Infinite Campus,
the
10-plus years ago for messages, because then parents can open the email when they want to. And then there are some parents who are blocking the emails and do not want to receive any more emails from the school or from Infinite Campus. So it is a challenge, and I know, Mayor Perry used to always bring it up too. What's that triangulation of how many parents are active in Infinite Campus looking at grades? And I believe we did that once with him, to say, like, is there a correlation between the kind of grades and academic progress kids are making and
The
whose
parent
parents are involved in looking at it? And obviously, that's at a secondary level, because we don't have that relationship with grading in Infinite Campus for elementary, but I don't know. Again, we're open to trying to come up with new ideas. I don't know what we'll come up with, but I think, again, in having some conversations with principals already, there's just some we just have to try some different things. I don't know what it is. I don't think it's gonna be giving up all of this. I think it's what else can we do, right, to capture and engage. I mean, I will say, the time that I have seen, and I know Dr. Golubsky absolutely will attest to this, you will too, and a few of you who've gone to different things, or remember Maxwell as a parent, maybe you as well, Ms. Keegan, but when we have, the past 2 years, when we've opened up the come into the grade level and see your students' science fair project, right, that's when we see the most parents in the building. But you also want to be careful, because you don't want to be like, hey, parents, why don't you come in the auditorium now so we can talk to you about X, right? So we want to make sure that we have that, right? Parents want to come in and see what their kids are doing and meet the teachers and meet the people they're working with every day, and we have really good results with that. That's something that I've talked about with one particular principal, like, how do we capture that time? What else can we do during those times to capture, inform, communicate? You know what I'm saying? So, like, how do we have like an open hour, come over here when you're done with your child's presentation, or author's visit, or something like that. You know, in the media center, we're gonna have a group of administrators or guidance counselors, and we'll have this conversation. You know, that's the level we're at. How do we take what we have, where we know parents are and what they're coming to see, and capturing that capacity? I think that's where we need to be creative with those ideas, and I think each principal will have something a little different to add to that.
Vice Chair?
One thing that struck me was that the number of people that said they got their information from social media, because we don't have social media.
Right.
And so I feel like we need to, in a way to improve communication, actually have some sort of presence, and I know you hate it, I do know that, but somehow to communicate all of the good things that are happening in the schools, because I don't ever hear of anything good, honestly. Like, I'm just hearing all the mudslinging and all of the negativity, but there's never anything coming from the school saying, hey, look at this fun run, hey,
Yeah,
look at
so many good
this,"
things.
you know? And so I really feel like we need a presence of the good stuff. And I don't know how to quantitatively do that, but I feel like we need a social media presence.
I know,
somehow.
I can feel her staring at the back of my head, right, or the side of my head. Dr. Golubsky feels very much like you do.
People are friggin' lunatics on social media.
She's given me the eyes right now. I would say this, it's not that I hate it, but how are we gonna manage that? What else? Is it me that is gonna manage now social media and all the things coming from 6 schools? Am I asking the principals to add that to their plate, that they're managing a Facebook page and an Instagram? I just don't know quite yet what the how is, how we're going to manage that. Dr. Golubsky very much, and I'll let you speak, but very much wants to open up and start. And I think this would be a good start. And I think Member Donovan would agree. They want to, with the new literacy program in the elementary, start small and have a social media literacy. Push things out, the good, the information, the nice. That would coincide with the community literacy program, right? So there's a match here of, let's get this information out, and then they, however it works, right? They repost, they share, we repost, reshare, and we start to build something that way. I think if we, but now it's Dr. Golubsky who's running a social media page, which she's willing to do. However, again, how many more things are we gonna ask us to do that could get, right, like turn comments off? We just post what we need to post, as far as, I do see that mostly for any school district pages, it's post the information, turn comments off, so it's not a chatter, right, and we're not monitoring that. That makes it a little more reasonable, I think, for us to manage. But at least it's something that we could have a presence on Instagram. I think we would start with Instagram. Is that what you wanted to do, Dr. Levy? Instagram and Facebook?
Both.
Both, right?
If I may. Are you done?
I don't hate it. I just think we need to structure rules around it, what the expectations are for what we're posting, and to make sure that we then don't have it go rogue on the school side. Then each teacher's there's an, English 9 Facebook page. Like, we have to have some structure. I think there does have to be some policy, social media, what the district expects for us pushing out social media. We just don't have that right now. It has potential to go a little rogue.
We'll hear from Member Maxwell next,
Yeah.
and then we'll follow up with Member Donovan.
So I mean, all of that sounds great. I think that that's a great idea, especially if you're willing to manage that. But what makes this proposal different than the last 2 years? I mean, I came into this position, and my biggest concern was parental involvement. And, over the past 2 years, we've been told that we've kind of
Increased.
grown in that department, but we haven't. That showed on the audit, and these are things we're already doing.
So I would say that I would disagree in a sense that we are growing. We have seen engagement increase in the schools. I just want to keep, there's 80% of the parents didn't respond to this audit and survey. 80% of the parents, when we sent it out last February, didn't respond, right? We came up with similar findings. We're trying to find new ways. So we're talking about people who have very strong feelings about these topics one way or the other, right? That's what this survey is showing. That's what our survey, that's what qualitative and quantitative data shows you. So there is improvement, but there's always ways to make it. If people aren't reading our information and then they're making their own narratives and posting it on social media, and parents and community members are just taking that as fact, that is our biggest battle, that people are just accepting what is posted on social media as fact without ever contacting anybody in the school department. That is why I've been saying that for however long Facebook has been alive. That has been our biggest problem. We just need to encourage people to have that human connection with their teachers, with their schools, pick up the phone and call us, because our day is filled with humans, not computer screens, right? We're not sitting at our computer screens all day. None of us are. We're in meetings, we're with parents, we're with students, we're doing walkthroughs, we're meeting with consultants, right? We're not doing that. So it's hard when social media has created this very immediate feed of response that our school structure just doesn't allow for, right? Teachers are teaching all day. I do not want my teachers responding to emails all throughout the day, nor do you, right? We don't want that. So how do we create something that, I would do it. There needs to be structure, and it's going to be a budget issue. I'm probably the only urban district that does not have a communication relations staffer, full-time staff person. And so, I'm not asking for one, but it's got to be a realistic conversation at some point, because if we want to do these things, I can't rely on students in that's great ideas, right? Students in a program could probably create some really great things for us to push out really positive information for us. But are we relying on student programs and classes to be pushing information out that we want to, yes, to a degree, but not solely, right? We can't rely on that solely. So just some thoughts.
Member Donovan?
Well, I'm glad we're talking about social media, because I totally agree with you, and I've kind of been talking about this for a couple of years. I've done some research, Haverhill and Lowell, they can cover, when they showcase teachers in their social media. So I don't know how we get around this, but I think it's probably one of the most important goals. And if it means giving up something else, I don't know what we'd give up, but I don't know. And I do know that there's no one in the building to do it. We could ask to do fairly. I don't know.
But we can start small and have this idea and see if it works, right? If it helps with people understanding what's happening. And the other thing we know, Facebook does not reach
No.
our 7,000 families. It reaches 1,000 or 2,000, whoever's on Facebook, right? It's our only English-speaking population typically on the unofficial pages or political pages or wherever things are being posted. So we have to be cautious of that. I don't know what the technology is, if there's automatic translations for Facebook and Instagram, things like that. I'd have to learn more about that. Because then I'm also putting out information to the same group of people, and we're missing a lot, missing another group, right? And one of the things that we did when we went to Talking Points is that we absolutely, our second language population was very clear 3 years ago, and they did not rely on email. Right, they rely more on the texting opportunities and WhatsApp and things like that. And so when we worked with the LPAC, that kind of came out also loud and clear. I think it was one of the first years we had LPAC that everybody said when we were in a meeting, like, they all have phones, right, and then they have the capability for translation, right? So it's just seems to be more reasonable for us to reach more people. So, now is it working? Is our WhatsApp, is our Talking Points being opened and read more frequently than our emails? Do we we stop kind of sending the multitude of emails, and then when the emails come, they're only sort of the things that are coming out of Infinite Campus notifications. They're not coming from like principals and things like that on a regular basis. I think we can start looking at that, but there's going to be a monetary piece here. Like I said, Haverhill has a communications probably office with multiple people in it, right? And so people are going to schools, they're taking photographs, they're making sure no publish document, they know who can be published and who can't. There's work behind that, So definitely, again, worth the conversation to see what we can do feasibly in small chunks and see if it works. I feel like that's kind of all we can do right now, see what would work differently.
Thank you.
Just one quick housekeeping item. Just my own observation. We're going to be going through this piece by piece, having discussion on every item. I will decline any motion to extend this meeting past 9 o'clock. It ain't happening. So what we're going to do is we may have to potentially schedule a follow-up special meeting to get through all of these things. We're not going to conquer Rome in a day. So I just want to acknowledge
Be
that.
positive, we
We
may.
may, but I'm trying to be a realist.
Okay.
We'll hear from Member Shabilia, and then we can circle back for additional conversation. Member Shabilia?
So I thank you, because another late night would be tedious. My recommendation would be let's do the blue ones first, as those are the ones that we're targeting. And then maybe the green, because those are budget, and the yellow is ongoing, and I think we're all fairly caught up on those. But anyways, not what I wanted to say. I think it's important that as a body, we level set on what our expectation is for communication, because the idea that we're going to hit 100% is wildly outside the realm of possibility. What is a reasonable goal? And I ask that as a legitimate and honest question, because I don't know. What are other districts hitting? What do we want to hit? I mean, if we hit 40% and get a 40% read rate, is that good? Because it sounds really good to me, but I'm coming from a different perspective and a different world. So I think at some point we have to have that conversation of how do we deem this a success? Because the idea that every parent's going to be engaged and everyone's going to be happy is the case in 0 situations in any part of life. That being said, we are looking now at winter break coming up for all the local colleges, and ironically enough, had a conversation 2 days ago with a student at Northern Essex who's doing a marketing program, and they're always looking for internships. We set up a shared inbox, social media at Methuen, and you, whoever sets the rules, and we start real low level. Let that person manage that way. I mean, I know Lisa's become a master website builder in her spare time here at Methuen Public Schools, but you guys have other more important things to do than run a social media page. I think that there are opportunities out there that we can work smarter, not harder. And if we can leverage those, and if we can plan that to align with the semester that's coming up, I think that could be a good opportunity for us. Because if it's free, it's for me.
Okay.
Member Willett?
I have a few concerns, and I mentioned it during prior meetings. I know that in Salem, New Hampshire, they have a communications office, and they avail themselves of a Salem Life. I think having Methuen Life, and they're mostly positive. They're
definitely.
not political controversy. Having some type of monthly informational, highlight a teacher, highlight a staff person, outreach, and then also have some type of summit with the topic and have professionals come in and give a presentation. I know Peabody, they had a tragic situation, and they gathered the community together on the issue of bullying. And I think we need to have some type of summit that would be under controlled circumstances of maybe having the police chief, maybe someone from the district attorney's office, have professionals, and have a bullying summit to have people come together. And is it local that we have to make modifications? We've talked about this in the past. I think there's some strings attached at the state, and there's some weakness in the existing law. But I think there's a cry for reform within the bullying enforcement system. So having some type of, not all the time, maybe quarterly, a summit. It could be on bullying, it could be on social media. And in terms of social media, just a segue, what I've witnessed, and I don't know what the solution is that people that would go through the normal channels of superintendent, principal, mayor, school committee members of constituent issues, what they're doing is venting on Facebook. And I think they're getting lost through the channels. And I think it's a disservice. They might not be aware of what they can do. They can reach out to a superintendent, they can reach out to a principal, they can reach out to a school committee member, a mayor, even having some type of form that could be sent that maybe we're CC'd on. That's my biggest concern, is that people are venting on Facebook. And I've seen periodically my colleagues respectfully, diplomatically, intelligently reaching out to them and saying, by the way, reach out to the principal, reach out to your school committee, reach out to the superintendent. Facebook and social media will not solve your issues. And you have a right to vent, but I'm concerned that other people will think that that's a place to solve situations, and it's not. There's other avenues that traditionally, we are the elected school committee. You have an elected mayor, you have a superintendent and principals and frontline people that can help. And that's my big, so I don't know how we address that. I don't know if we send some type of a advisory to people. We have a summit talking about the do's and don'ts on social media, that people have an outlet. I know in terms of the Arlington neighborhood, there's a center where there's people that help with social services. And I think there's an at-need community that they might not be aware of being able to sign up for fuel assistance or food stamps or assistance in the home or food banks or clothing drives or anything like that. So that would be my thing, having summits, having some type of newsletter through Methuen Life, and then having some type of advisory to people that social media is not going to solve your problems in terms of a constituent manner. So that would just be my feedback.
Thank you,
I
Member
also would
Willett.
say, I'm sorry, I would also say that the other thing that has piqued my interest that was hugely successful during COVID is our video messaging. So we did that, I know I did it, the principals did it sort of religiously on the video messaging so people could see us. And the capability today versus 5 years ago on translations and subtitles is so much greater and easier to do. So I did revisit that last week too, to say like, maybe we try that, right? And we just do information and we shoot out information. It's not interactive, but it's information sharing in ways that people can watch on their own time. They're not, obligated to come out physically to an auditorium or school on a busy night. Just another opportunity. So I just wanted to share that. That was something that, as I was going through this, that hit because we got a lot of views on my YouTube channel to get a lot of views that year. Reading books even, we read books out loud that teachers could share. I mean, there were a lot of creative ways we did that maybe we could bring that back, but use it differently. Sorry, Member Maxwell, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Can I just rewind for a quick second? When we had the meeting on September 30th, I was under the impression that we were going to be scheduling a special meeting to ask questions regarding what was in the audit. And like, I appreciate this because these are recommendations for obviously consideration, but is there going to be a point tonight where we can ask specific questions about what we received after we've reviewed it? And I also thought that CBIZ would be here to answer any questions that we might have.
So the thing is that with CBIZ, in terms of their ability to continuously come back, I need to be very cautious of, I don't want to take advantage of our one or perhaps two additional meetings and have it not wasted, but, I think that there's an appetite from the city council. They're asking for another follow-up, and it's something that if we were to do anything like that, we would have to have.
Joint meeting?
Well, the thing is that when it comes to CBIZ, we don't have them forever. So we had that meeting that I was hoping would have been, extensive by way of presentation, discussion, et cetera. We had them available for the entire night. I know that there wasn't really an appetite among some counselors for that. So, they're not available tonight. But, I think at this point, we have an opportunity to maybe engage them again, for a follow-up. But, I'm going to share my own 2 cents here. Now that they've given us the presentation, we have the survey results. I think that by looking at that, we can extrapolate a lot of information from what they've given us. And then from there, internally, we, work on this follow-up conversation. But ultimately, I think what the superintendent is doing here by presenting, this path forward, this, I think, is, where we want to focus our attention. But certainly happy to schedule another follow-up with them, but it would have to be something where we're going to really maximize that time because we don't have them
Okay.
indefinitely.
Will there be time at the end of this meeting after we go through the recommendations that if any questions weren't addressed in this recommendations for consideration, we'll be able to ask those?
I don't see why not.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are we also having an executive session regarding the redacted names in the audit that we discussed?
So the thing that I think is a misconception, this is a big misconception, everything in that survey report, it's very clear about any references that are being made. It's very clear.
I also
Yeah,
just want to
missing
add that there's no reason legally under the 9 reasons. Huh? There's no purpose that is binding for us to have an executive session with what you just asked for. It doesn't exist on the list of 9 options to have an executive session. Does that make sense?
Just in something else too, this was implied in the public square that,
that make sense?
suggesting that there were redactions and whatever. Everything is in there. If you read through it, this was something that.
I mean, we were told on a meeting that names were redacted, and that's why it was sent back. So I'm just curious. It is what was said. We can go back to that meeting, but
There may have been some misconceptions, but everything is in there, and it's all public.
okay. And what if there are some issues in it that we feel need to be addressed that maybe aren't addressed on an administration level, and I know that executive sessions are for certain reasons, one would qualify for one of those reasons. So how do we get there?
So we can discuss, I know Attorney Maccaro is here. This is something, it's not, we don't have an executive session scheduled tonight. We can maybe connect about, whether, for instance, any discussion regarding specific personnel. I think that could, inch into that realm of executive session material. We can connect about this separately, but I think in terms of what we have on the agenda tonight,
Oh, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I just missed the first 5-10 minutes of the meeting, so I didn't know if I missed something. That's why I said, can we rewind for a quick
sure,
second?
right.
But I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Member Willett?
I mean, we know what the global issues are. It's professional development, it's bullying, and it's staff morale. And that was universal across the board. Now, in terms of the cleanliness and the maintenance issues, right, that's something that, what I would recommend is that we make sure we have a timetable of when we initially did the surveys and when we're gonna do hopefully the second round, is not a year in duration. Okay, if it's 6 months, I think that's more reasonable to have a second round of surveys. And then, because you're quantifying that aspect, not your feelings, so to speak, but you're quantifying that survey, at least we can check on the metrics. I think, there was some positive items, school safety, but then you have the school safety with the dynamic of the bullying. So how can you be an entirely safe school environment when you have drastically deep concerns about bullying? Now, I think bullying is not being enforced properly in this school system. I've said that for the last 2 years. Now, whether that has to be a local reform effort or in conjunction with our legislative delegation, or working in partnership and looking at Peabody, because they faced a tragedy of a suicide related to bullying. I think potentially we could experience something like that, because when you look at how damning the audit findings were, there's absolutely, and it could be a civil rights violations I witnessed in that audit, bullying to the point of self-harm, suicidal thoughts. I don't have any hope of having a resolution. We've talked about, as a school committee, the whole dynamic of having kids potentially in the room, the person who's bullying and the victim, to try to iron out the differences. And I've had deep reservations about that. I don't think we're receiving the full reports. So on that front, either through a task force or having outside professionals, similar to what the health task force, that's a glaring thing that going into the next school year, whoever's on the school committee is going to have to really work on that. And again, I can't put it entirely on the local thing, because we might have our hands tied of what we're doing. But I know that the teachers are crying for help, the parents are crying out for help, and the students are. So that's universality on a bullying issue. The professional development, again, is that might be some budgetary. I would focus on that because, Member Donovan has been on the forefront of literacy, working with Representative Hamilton and yourself, right? We know collectively we don't have librarians. We don't have enough reading specialists. So that was the thing that I know rock bottom is the budget. No one's happy with the budget. We've had to make sacrifices, right? But how do you, like professional development, okay, and how do we make sure that's accomplished? But then we also talked about librarians we need and more reading specialists and the STEM supervisors. So that is something that we would have to work as a committee. The other thing is the dynamic of the low staff morale. And it's, distrust of the administrators and the distrust of the central office, like, I took a vote on that. So I, remember Maxwell and I, or others, right? That, if you look through this, and I hope everybody in this community looks through that audit. Now, am I happy entirely with that vehicle, that audit, compared to, like, let's say, the police management study? No. I think the police management study was a better vehicle than this, but if you look at the quantitative surveys, is rock bottom on the things that we should be dealing with: bullying, professional development, and staff morale. So, thank you.
Member Donovan?
So, may I suggest that we set some goals for ourselves tonight? Like, before we leave, we will give Dr. Kwong our suggestions on what we want to see for goals, or what area. Do we want 3 weeks? That's a lot, because we got 7 months to go, and you have to collect data, and it has to be presented. When's your like, we get it in May? I forget.
February and June.
Yeah, I mean, we have to be reasonable. So if we pick some areas that we think we can make effective progress, and task Dr. Kwong and her team with that, to come up with the goals. I mean, obviously, you're not gonna write them tonight, but come back. Set up a timeline and move on. I mean, from there. So at least, if we move with purpose tonight, I think we'll all feel better walking out of here, knowing that we've had we have a purpose. I'd also like to see, I think it's something worth discussing, when this would be re-administered, because they promised, but I think we need to have more conversations with them about, maybe we'd want to change some of the questions. I don't know. But I would hope we could focus on what kind of goals, what areas we want to focus on for the goals. And looking at those blue areas, I like to give a pitch right now for bullying and improving communication. I don't know how the rest of you feel about that.
Can I'm going to hop in and share a thought, because I'm on the same page
Okay.
that you are, because as I mentioned when the auditors originally were conducting the presentation, I mentioned in my remarks that the audit interviews, the surveys, they represent a snapshot in time, where, okay, back in February, March, April, there were facilities issues. There were, you had this huge uproar over the budget that lasted for quite some time. And so all of those feelings, all of those sentiments, they were all captured in the survey results. They were captured in the interviews. And so in reading, for instance, the survey data, et cetera, today, you would think that, for instance, the Timony is perhaps a war zone still for rodent issues and the like, when in fact, there has been a demonstrated significant improvement in that time. That improvement is not captured anywhere. And that's why I think it's important, as Member Willett indicated, to continue to go back and review these metrics and, go back out there and get another temperature check. I think that's something that we need to do. That's very important. But, so when it comes to facilities, we've been making great progress on that. We're going to keep doing that. We're going to keep on it. And I think that that's something that was clearly a major issue, and that's something that we're actively addressing. We've been doing that. We're going to continue to do that. Ditto for the budget. We're in the process of getting, standing up this finance subcommittee where, we're going to have this ongoing conversation about the budget. That's something that was an issue flagged in the audit. We're taking tangible action to deal with that going forward. I know PD was mentioned, but I like where you're going with bullying, where that's something where, okay, let's say with facilities, we had this crisis issue, we brought together everybody into the same room, and we've taken these steps, and we're following up on that on an ongoing basis. Does it make sense? And something like this may already be in existence, but this could be our opportunity to maybe establish a bullying task force, where we bring in everybody, and we really put forward a concerted effort to, and this is going to sound tacky, but it's something that I think is important, in our society today, because our society is so just collectively lost. I just, you look at the world around us, people have no respect for each other anymore, and I'm saying that in a very general type of way. But, maybe we get back to, this core messaging to students about just respecting one another. Granted, that's part of what we do now, right? Like my first grader at the CGS talk about doing your best, right? And all the concepts that go with that. Maybe we really double down on that and we bring in people into the same room and make a concerted effort to address the issue of bullying. I think that would be great. When it comes to communication, I'm going to share this as somebody who is a new Methuen Public Schools parent. I've never been a Methuen Public Schools parent until just a couple of weeks ago at the start of the new school year. And on the daily, I'm getting a talking points text. I'm getting an email. I'm getting the newsletter weekly, talking points. I'm getting an email. If my child makes a trip to the nurse's office, I get an email saying, your child went to the nurse's office. If you didn't get a call, that means it wasn't a major issue, but you may want to follow up with the nurse or the principal. The level of communication that I have been on the receiving end of, I look at complaints about communication, just stating this objectively. I don't know what the hell people are talking about. Now, granted, there may be, variance in terms of lived experience at maybe one school or another, comparatively speaking, but I'm speaking from my own personal experience. I think there's a tendency to, and I don't mean this in any negative way, almost over-communicate. That's just my experience. At the CGS, Mrs. Proietti is always sending out these newsletters, and I'm getting these the messages from the teacher, and I'm personally pleased with the level of communication I've been receiving as a parent. So I think that the thing that we need to be cognizant of is that in these audit findings, there is a very diverse array of perceptions that are also in the mix here. So there may be another parent, say at another school, they don't perceive that the level of communication is up to snuff. Others might. So, I think we need to be cognizant of the perception side of it too and how that influences any of these results. But again, getting back, I'm kind of getting off on a lecture and I don't mean to do that. I think we do need to hone in on one area that was flagged as a major issue, something that, there is opportunity for progress. I think that issue is bullying. And I think if we were to just dive in collectively as a community, we're tackling the issue of literacy, this idea where, literacy, it's not just up to the schools, it's not just up to parents, it is a community-wide, one big Methuen family concept where we're all in on the idea of literacy. And you know what? I think the same goes for bullying. I think that there are kids out there in this city, they have terrible role models in their life. They haven't had demonstrated for them what it means to be respectful. And so I think we need to have a community-wide effort to tackle the issue of bullying, where we're collectively, adults, kids, everybody in between, dealing with this issue. And so if I were to right here say, what's the next task force? I'd go with bullying. And I'm off on a tangent, I apologize. Remember Willette?
I concur with you because I did talk about bullying having like a task force on it, because I think what Member Donovan said is exactly right. If we can get at least some type of action plan tonight of things, a sense of the committee, like what through the mayor, when can we anticipate the next survey that could be sent out? And you would work on that front. When, in a few weeks, the establishment of a bullying task force and having members from the district attorney's office potentially, the Methuen Police Department, outside mental health, people within the administration, maybe one or two school committee members, some parents. I think that's absolutely crucial. And then also like the professional development, I think is already in the notes. But I mean, if we can get something tonight that we're gonna say, okay, no, we know in a few weeks, we're gonna have something reported back to us, I think is so crucial, because we can go back and forth, but we have to, as a committee, do some action tonight and make some recommendations. Thank you.
Sure.
I'm off the soapbox.
No, I am appreciating the direction this is going, because the fact that you are all nodding and agreeing, to some degree is very helpful to give me direction. I agree. I think we're trying to narrow the focus, and it certainly helps if we're all in agreement what that focus is to actually make it work. So, yeah, I think maybe we don't call it a bullying task force, but that idea, I think we have seen success. It would just take some time to structure, who and how and how, we're taxing a lot of people in the community for different ways. These are gonna have to be evening meetings, right? Who's willing to do those, how we're gonna get people together, purpose, facilitation. I think that's what I would need a little bit of time maybe to think about with my team on what we could make that look like. To have it be purposeful, I think would be the most important.
And also, I think, too, is reaching out to Peabody, because they experienced a tragedy. So they had a summit, and they might have some concrete recommendations, and they might be recommending legislation through their delegation. And maybe we approach the governor's office and say, this is such a major issue, not only in Methuen, but probably even statewide. We need something, better tools to handle the situation. Now, it might be sometimes referrals to outside services. It might be some additional monies. It could be giving us better tools legislatively. I think also, like you mentioned, you have to learn racism somewhere. You have to learn bullying somewhere. And I think at times the kids will mimic the parents in the home front, and sometimes it's a defense mechanism. My parents bully me, they bully each other, so I'm gonna go to school, I'm gonna mimic what the parents are doing, because that's all that's my mindset. So I think you touched on something too, is that at times the bully can be the victim because they're experiencing something. Because if you talk about racism is not, it's a learned behavior. Kids are not born racist. They learn it. And we have to tap out and say, no, we don't encourage racism. We encourage diversity and history and understanding. And I think the be kind is also a different component of that as well. But I think bullying would be, to me, the focal point right now.
I would add a comment to this, and just to make sure that you are all, one of the things I know we have experienced is that if we're gonna do something like this, it's gonna go big or go home, right? So, and I mean that in the sense of, I haven't said that in a while. When we talk about community, one of the things that does frequently land in schools with kids is all of the community sports and groups and Pop Warner, and so if we're talking community, right, kids are having issues on these teams outside of the school day. How do we bring in those groups? How do we bring in, youth soccer and youth hockey, and so that we're all talking the same language, right? Because I think there is behavior that might be accepted in some arenas that wouldn't be accepted in other arenas, that we have to be very thoughtful of and educate, right? So are we on the same page with that? If we're gonna talk about this, we're talking big, right? Are you thinking big?
Let's make this our issue.
Okay.
Because I think that, here's the thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, and we'll chime in. But if this is something that we can address and make meaningful progress, future generations will be better off for it. And this is something that I think we can collectively start taking a whack at. Member Shibeli, Member Maxwell?
Just quick question for my own morbid curiosity. When you talk about the soccer league and the hockey league and the Pop Warner and all the other folks,
Yep.
have we ever reached out to them before and tried to bring them in and work together?
Not on issues like this, logistic things or recreational things, sure, but not that impact behaviors in both groups, no. Not that I'm aware of, I don't think.
Because I mean, just in my limited experience, I could see an opportunity where fostering those relationships would be beneficial just across the board, not even just with bullying.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think, and I want to say, just because they use our facility, we probably have the most fluid relationship with youth basketball, but that's probably more out of convenience than like us making that happen. But we know most people in the youth basketball leagues because they use our facilities, they're always around, there are kids. Like, there seems to be more connection with youth basketball in our buildings and the kids and who's on whose teams. That, and again, out of convenience mostly, not because we're trying to structure something. This would be very different. I mean, this is big, right? Because you have to get everybody to the table, and you have to get everybody to the table to agree to have the conversation about what our expectations are for kids. And it sounds easy, but it's, I'm up for the challenge. I mean, this is something I think it will help us understand more specifically, get to what the misconceptions are, where the education needs to be, what families are dealing with, and what kinds of, I know you called it Summit member, Willette, but like what kinds of supports and resources do our kids need, do our family, maybe we're just not thinking of it. Oh, the door locked? Oh, I'm sorry. That was recorded.
Member Maxwell?
Few things. So I know a few years ago, I know that there's a local gym, House of Athletes, in town, and I know Brendan personally, and I know that he would be more than happy to get into the schools. I know you've met with him a few times. I'm not sure why that hasn't happened, but I know that he would be a great advocate for this. And I mean, he has access to the Pop Warner kids, the basketball kids, the wrestling kids. He has access to all of these kids. He's a major component in the community. I know that bullying is our number one concern. I would like to recognize the other issues as well. I mean, I know in this presentation, it doesn't mention anything about the IEP compliance, and that was another huge concern when it came to the audit. And that the concerns were, failure in IEP implementation, budget and staffing issues, severely restricted delivery of required special ed services. I think when half of our budget is going to special ed, we really need to hone in on our IEP compliance and why it's not happening and effective. The other issue that was really noted, and I mean, I've also asked for those reports back in July. I was told I'd get them September, October. I still don't have them. So the other issue that is frequently mentioned in the audit is PD. So as much as I want to focus a lot of our energy on bullying, I am 100% behind that. I really want to hone in on the IEP compliance and the PD too, because I think that those are going to be morale. I think that's going to boost morale with the PD. I think that that's going to boost morale with the kids with the IEP compliance issues. So if we could kind of somehow fit those issues in here as well too, that would be great.
So if you look at the PD one here on the district-wide piece, so I've added a couple things. I'll let Dr. Golofsky talk because we've had some conversations about this on the note on the bottom. It's interesting to us, and I just want to make sure that everybody understands. I've shared this. This is not new. I've shared it with the audit committee that these questions were geared towards teachers against administrators, right? There were no specific questions for administrators and what their role is in their school and their district. There was no separate questions for like support staff or secretaries or cafeteria employees, custodian. There were not separate sections, right? So these questions were very much geared towards the teacher and their perception of everything else. Right, so I'm trying to take that into account when I'm reading this, that our administrative team didn't have an opportunity to answer questions about what they're experiencing because they're in the front lines of parents and staff and people not being compliant, right, with things. So I'm trying to keep that into perspective. The professional development piece here, having been doing this for 14 years in this district, right, assistant superintendent responsible for PD, I've been very intimately involved in PD, being superintendent. And we have found over the course of the 10-plus years that we've been doing this, that sometimes teachers have a very different perspective on what is needed or what is requested. And this is what I mean, right? Because in their contract, I'm required to give them certain PD on programs that we need to implement. So that's what we do. We only have 5 half-days and a full day, right? So while there's a very stressed feeling of our staff of the fact that we have to spend most of our year talking about CKLA implementation with our K-4 teachers, because we have to. We have to do that. But that's not the only thing they do and teach, right? So that's where that tension starts coming from, because I only have 2 hours with them on the half-days and 6 hours with them on a full day. So there's just not enough time to do all those things in a given year. And we've struggled with that my whole career here, since principal to now. How do we build in that time? And so one of the things that we have found, and we've ebbed and flowed with this idea, and again, Dr. Golofsky and I already talked about it. She's going to already talk to the PD council about it. We have a PD council, also contractual, that consists of teachers and administrators. So we have a council of usually not more than 10, 12 total.
14.
14, okay, that was close. All right, so, a dozen staff that talk about the PD calendar, how things are gonna be arranged, what we need for any given day. Some of that is decided because we have CKLA, right? Like, there's some things that I'm required to do. People may not always like it, but I have to give them the proper PD to implement a new program. And so what we have found, and this is going back to my time as assistant superintendent, is that when teachers give the best reviews, meaning we do PD evaluations, and Dr. Lapsky can pull those up. We do an evaluation after every half day and every full day, a Likert scale 1 through 5 on topics, on do you want this again, right? It informs each group, each person who leads those PD sessions, like that was a flop, or do that again, right? And so our whole team looks at those every time. It works like clockwork, right? It goes out usually within 48 hours. Lisa then sends the whole spreadsheet out to all the administrative team who was leading, so we know that presenter. There was one particular presenter this last day that I was like, amazing, that basically everybody gave a 5 to, and we don't usually see that very often, right? Like, everybody really enjoyed this. It was new, lots of information, she was dynamic. So we have to balance the time that teachers have on their own to digest is typically the time they want time, they want like prep time to do stuff that they think they need to do. Usually they know what they need to do, right? We just don't have a lot of that time to give. Am I making sense? So we're trying to figure out, like, how can we schedule these? We have to have you in front of people to teach you how to use something that might be new, right? Or have conversations about trauma-informed instruction, right? Or IEP compliance, or how to use a certain program, because that's part of PD, right? If we're using a certain new program, we have to give people time to understand how to do it. Balance that with, is the next time then, now you work with your team, you're digesting it, and you have that work time that you need to make sense of it. Am I making sense to everybody? So we've how do we do that this year? That's what she's gonna work on with the team. That's what I make sense of that PD, because again, I've seen that ebb and flow, and it's hard, because if we had 5 full days, it still wouldn't be enough, right? And so, I mean, is that a conversation for us and calendar and, but contractually, we only have so many days in the school year to work with, right? I'm like, what's happening?
I have a quick question.
So that's ongoing. It's not like we're not, so I I say that for a couple reasons. Everything on here that we've bulleted is part of our conversation, right? It's not, we're taking this to see what actually is the most useful parts of this that we can make some sense of and roll with and move forward with. So it might not be a goal that's on my formal goals. That doesn't mean we're not doing it. There's a lot of things that happen in the district that are not on my goals, right? I think we know that for everybody. But, I agree, there's some focus, and then there's some follow-up on what we're doing to see it differently that hopefully would come out in something like another survey or something of that nature.
Sure, I'll just add to that, from pursuing various grant funds, we're in some nice cycles with outside providers for many grade levels and subject areas, where formal PD has been planned for the days that are, as Dr. Kwong said, limited in terms of opportunity. So we've also become creative in having those outside consultants come for job-embedded professional development and help with CP planning, but also modeling lessons, co-teaching lessons with teachers during a typical school day. So we're looking forward to adding that too. I feel like at this point this year, we're in a much better place than, as you said, Mayor, when the survey was given through the receipt of those grant funds and plans. And I think this issue, comes back to the thread of communication that we talked about earlier, where in my mind, I know where we've projected to go with PD, and I think we can do a better job communicating that to teachers as well. So I think the PD issue is also rooted in communication, which I have another meeting with the council next week.
Member Member Willett, did you want to say something? No. So, Member Donovan?
Okay, I just always am that person that needs to summarize. So, we've given Dr. Kwong and her team the directive to focus on the goal, and I heard what you said, Ms. Maxwell, but, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, and we all walk out of here saying, here's what we're going to expect. The bullying, but bullying and discipline policies, correct? Do we all, am I on the same page? I feel like sometimes
That's the
in another
direction
book.
we're rowing in.
Okay,
Yeah.
but should we wrap that up? Are we all done with that piece?
I think for
you,
me,
are you
I'd
good?
say that if that's, like, now, I'm gonna right now, I have to talk to the team, like, I can talk to people to actually develop something. I think that's where I'd like to go is,
Sure, we-
there's a lot of people who are not here who need to be part of this conversation about
Just to fill in Member DiZoglio,
how.
we're launching a war on bullying.
But I just, my thing about this meeting is I thought we were going to still talk about the audit. Because I still have questions, and I thought CBIZ was going to be in on this meeting, because I still have questions about how they did the audit. Because,
I asked this too.
oh, okay. Because I'm just wondering.
Something to keep in mind too, so there was no plan to have CBIZ here because we can't have them back over and over again for meetings. We can probably have 1 to 2 more big meetings with them. But the thing is that they have contact information. I actually should mention that. I don't know if it's in the actual audit report, but if there are questions that we have about specific methodologies, et cetera, feel free to reach out to Right, on the last page of the report, Jared and Kelly, they provided their email addresses. Feel free to reach out to them with any questions.
I know I had asked them about the Malden comparable district. Did they send that to anybody?
I haven't seen the Malden comparison yet, but I can follow up with them. But again, feel free to reach out to them directly as well. They wouldn't have given us their email if they weren't open to that.
Also, as a point of clarification, if you have questions on how the audit was done, I think as a subcommittee, we may be able to answer most of them, because it's methodical and functional versus what they did. You know what I mean? We know what they did because they printed it for us.
Yeah, no, and that's why I thought that was the meeting.
Well, I think what would be beneficial is if, in fact, I think some of the other members, if they weren't anyone who wasn't a part of the working group for the audit, if you want to reach out directly to CBIZ, versus even the members of the working group, they're, I'm sure, happy to provide an outline of methodology and answer any follow-up questions. We're going to have them back, for sure, but we just want to be, I don't know, is litigious the word about our timing? That may not be the right word I'm looking for, but, to be just very careful about the timing. We want to, not litigious, that's a bad word, I don't know. Strategic. I went to bed last night at like 2:45, so I'm not really, yeah. There we go.
No. I just want
Here he
to
is.
say one thing. I've just been listening to all of your conversation tonight. If you do reach out to CBIZ, and if you do it by email, just recognize that anything that you send will be a public record, okay? So just caution you about what you put in that email and what you say. So just wanted to remind you of that, okay?
Member Willett?
Again, from my perspective, looking at all the schools, bullying was universally rated at the worst. And then the comments, so you look at the qualitative, the comments was a sense of hopelessness from staff, from parents, and from students. So if we take anything from this audit tonight, now she has her, with her action plans and her recommendations, and we'll follow up on that as a school committee. But if we take anything from tonight, is that we have a significant bullying issue that was reinforced in this audit, and we have an obligation to do something about it. And I think she's gonna run with it as a big function of what's gonna occupy us. And I know what's gonna happen is after the election, we're gonna have new members of the city council automatically, new members of the school committee automatically, and they should be invited as part of that process. So, that's from my perspective on that, and I also want to know that the survey, within a matter of weeks, will be given to the community again, like you said, the snapshot, and see if we have improved on the metrics, because that's what it comes down to, is the metrics. And then every single year, if we have a major goal, and then I think the theme of the audit was to survey the community as best we can. Now, the numbers, again, I understand what Member Shabilia is saying, you're never gonna get 100%, but I think if we have multiple rounds of the survey, you might be able to increase that second round, more people that will participate in the survey. Maybe they've been able to digest it, maybe it's been circulated, it's promoted. I think all of that is healthy. So that would be my mindset on that. Again, for the record, I'm not happy with the vehicle of the audit compared to what I read the police management study. But at the same time, too, you have quantitative information that is just a clarion call on bullying that we have to really focus on. Now, the dynamic is the school safety rated well. So I don't know how you can have discipline issues, bullying, but then they rate the school safety. So maybe the cameras and the school resource officers, or, monitoring things, or the cameras on the buses, whatever that is. It has a strange dichotomy. And I don't know, we have to really survey on that again, because you talk about school safety rated highly, but then discipline and bullying rated poorly with the membership of the community. So I don't know.
Just to add to the dichotomy of that, the discipline, we had twice the number of out-of-school suspensions than an average, right? So while it's perceived that discipline's a problem, statistics are showing us, based on hard data, that our discipline is actually harsh. So there's something weird about that, right? Because we've got school safety that's okay, bullying that's terrible, and our discipline is out of control.
And I think also, just to piggyback on what you were saying, that the RIS is not universal within our school system. So I think ultimately, you want to have in-house suspensions, because I think if you do out-of-school suspensions, sometimes you have to do it. Sometimes you have to do expulsions. We've had these conversations, right? But I think putting someone that might be going back into a home environment that might not be conducive to them, and maybe working through the issues in a in-house suspension, I think that's something as a budget we really have to work on, because if we only have it, I think, at 2 schools, right? That's something too that would be part of that dynamic as well.
Member Shabilia?
So to Member Willette's point, and the topic has come up in conversation with constituents over the last, what is it, almost a month now since this has been out. Why isn't it like the PD audit? I think it's worth just acknowledging that Methuen PD, and keep me honest, is what, 104-ish?
The major difference is it's a much smaller department, and everybody wanted to be a part of that process.
And there was not enough money in the city coffers to allow CBiz to interview and have the time to do every single employee at MPS. And then a section of parents and then a section of students. We would have been a multi-million-dollar audit, which price aside, I advocated for, and I'm sure the mayor will tell you that I sat at his table in his office and said, we should be doing everybody, knowing full well we couldn't. But I think that is what people need to understand, is when you're trying to audit something as large as Methuen Public Schools, you can't take the same approach you took with the PD. We have more lower school teachers than they have an entire department. And it's unfortunate because that audit was phenomenal.
And again, this is constructive dialogue, and I've heard feedback from city councilors too, is that the police management audit had an executive summary, and it had really a bona fide listing of recommendations. And there were recommendations, but it was scattered. And there were highlights of people's comments. And I think just the way it was constructed was different. I know that, again, the universe is small with the police department, obviously, and people were chomping at the bits. And I think best practices, too, was you don't want to reveal names, and they emphasize that. You cannot, everything's confidential. I want to also emphasize that, too. Any survey, right, it would be independent review and compiling, right? We've never had someone internally review the survey results. Like, someone did a survey and we couldn't map out who that person was. It was done by third party. And I think we have to emphasize that too, because there might be some misinformation that people say, if I do the survey, is it gonna come back to me? Because I'm saying things confidentially, or I have comments. So I'm hoping and optimistic that a second round, now that the audit is being produced. And again, I'm trying not to be too critical of saying, like you is, it is kind of like apples and oranges, the police management study versus the audit. And there is like things for potentially we could work on. But again, I want to know what the timetable is when we're gonna, because we spent $140,000. I think the police study was what, 80? So there was a differential in price, even though it was a smaller universe. So I want to get the biggest bang for the buck. And I also want to, if you talk about the action items, every single year we should be doing some type of vehicle like this to a third party to get something for the school committee, that we get a report of, have we, between the years, have we done any improvement on the metrics? So that's something too, that we at least can quantify something from, because there's a nebulous thing about feelings, because I might be something totally different. You're looking at an elephant and someone might be looking at a donkey, because someone's blindfolded and someone's reaching out or something like that. Again, everybody has a different perspective, but if you can quantitatively study it from year to year and give people an opportunity to do those surveys, I think that simply should be something as part of an action plan too.
And I think you're definitely onto something, and just speaking as somebody who was involved with that process from the PD side a couple of years ago with that audit, just being on the council at the time. I think something that is another difference, just as part of our conversation here, is that, you know, when it comes to the issues with the school department, you have people, if you read through the survey results, if you read through the audit, you have some people who are expressing sentiments that reflect a very positive experience with the school system, and there are people with negative perceptions as well, and those are included here. And a lot of the issues, and I don't mean to say that any of these issues are abstract, they're not, but like bullying, professional development, those are issues that, it can mean something different to different people. It's more conceptual. Whereas with the PD, just to reference what was said, I know you mentioned some councils might be thinking this. With the PD, you had very concrete issues that they were dealing with, where you had fake jobs created for friends and family. There was favoritism in hiring. They were skipping over people on the list for promotions. There were illegal promotions. People promoted with 4 city council votes instead of 5. You need 5, for crying out loud. The contracts that would have bankrupted the city, all these different issues, all the corruption. It was something that was very concrete, and everybody was chomping at the bit to be able to tell their story and to share their perspective. In this, I think, I agree with the thought of, we want to get the best bang for our buck, certainly. But I think in terms of the school audit versus the PD audit, there are just enough differences, in my view, that, kind of have that degree of separation. But again, nevertheless, circling back to the here and now with the schools, that's why I think we need to get after this notion of, for instance, bullying. It is a concept, but I think as part of the effort to really tackle it, we can address it in more of a concrete way.
Just very briefly, because you have valid points, very briefly. The common theme that I saw between this and the police was that there were allegations of favoritism. And that's something that a system we have to correct, that someone is favoring one person over the other. That my issues are not being fulfilled, but someone else's issues are being fulfilled. That the student is always right, or the parent is always right, or a teacher is always right, or someone is connected to that person. So, but that was the qualitative. It wasn't the quantitative. I know what you're talking about, because you had concrete recommendations, and there was like definite ethical violations in play. And again, obviously, it's going to go through its process. We don't want to comment on it. We know that, the other aspect of it. But that was the thing. If I was going to say the commonality between this audit and the police management was, again, instances of people saying favoritism. One party favored over the other. So I don't know how we address that.
Member Maxwell?
2 things, sorry, I had to step out, so I don't know if somebody else mentioned this, but when it comes to the discipline, I would just like to maybe have a discussion on in-house suspension, detention, and restorative practices. I think that without those, it's kind of it's not going to make a difference. However, to piggyback off of the favoritism comments, we had a lot of favoritism comments in this audit as well. So I'd like to know where those comments are directed. Where is the favoritism? Is there favoritism in staffing and hiring and students and IEP? Like, where is the favoritism? Because that wasn't fully understood in the audit. But I just want to kind of go back to the discipline process. Detention, in-house, restorative practices, I think that would be a healthy discussion to have, because discipline is just such a broad term. Maybe break it down to where we need to focus our energy and efforts. That's all.
Just going off of everything with the audit, with especially the nepotism and the favoritism, which we've heard from staff. I know I've heard it for the last 6 years where teachers felt like they were singled out. Previous teachers that I have left, which I'm not going to bring up hearsay, but I know staff members that I work with now that came from Methuen, and the reason why they left is because of the environment that they were in. Some of them took a $40,000 to $50,000 pay cut because they didn't like how the environment that they were working in. That's another thing about this audit where I was wondering how many previous employees did we try to reach out to, because I feel like those interviews would also give a clear picture as well of why are people leaving. Because you could throw money at people and say, okay, we'll move you up, give you a raise. But if they don't feel like the environment is good for them, no matter how much money you pay them, they're not going to stay. So the question is, like, this is a good way to start, but I also want to hit the point of why did previous staff members leave too? Because, like I said, I want to know, was it nepotism that caused them to leave, or money could have been an issue? But as we just saw in the audit, nepotism and favoritism is a big part of why the morale in our school system is low. So I just want to see what we could do to channel on that specifically. Thank you.
I think the problem is again, I hate to piggyback back on the police management, is because they did, it was a small universe, they did separate one-on-one interviews that were confidential. I don't know if it was to online surveys, or they targeted staff. And they got feedback, and they probably was very revealing. Maybe at some point we do something with a third party, and person will have a random selection and say, would you like to participate in a one-on-one survey or interview to really go into a deep dive into the school system? Again, there is advantageous nature to this of having a quantitative information. I think we should be doing it on an annual basis. But like, I think we need to go deeper, because I think what was reflected in that audit, I think is very damning overall. And I don't know what the solution is other than, but we have limited resources. We would have to focus on the municipality doing that. But I mean, there's food for thought, because I think Member DiZoglio, and I think by extension Member Maxwell, I think we have people's voices, but I want to also quantify those voices and find out exactly what was going on. I think talking about having exit interviews, and also giving someone, when you talk about best practices, everything's kept confidentially. There's a firewall. Nothing is given to the organizations being audited. And I think you're spending more money to do something like that, but it might also be productive to the school system and have those results published for the public. It's almost like a truth commission, but it's a confidential truth commission.
So I think at this point, to try to land the plane, at least for tonight, there's a lot to go through with the audit. We have a lot to go through, I think, with this document. I think it's good to have this, and we can digest this and use this as a framework for our discussion going forward. But I think what we have to do is, we have all this information, all these different things to consider. I think the key is to really narrow this down into bite-sized pieces. What do we want to focus on next? I think we've established tonight collectively the main issue that we want to focus on, and, you know, kind of branch that off and have that be a separate focus area. And then, you know, from that point, you know, perhaps we can connect and determine, you know, we can have additional follow-up meetings where we go through some of these other areas that are not in the context of, say, bullying, for example. And, you know, this is something that should be an ongoing conversation, you know, again, as you referenced, you know, continuing to go after additional follow-up, you know, efforts in terms of gathering metrics. This is just going to be something that we have to keep at the forefront of our mind and stay after.
I don't know if we're ending the meeting. I just want to make it clear that I don't mean for this to come off as like rude or insensitive or anything. I just feel like this was kind of a waste of time, because we didn't really go through the audit like I had assumed we were going to. We didn't really ask the questions that we wanted to ask. We didn't really address, I mean, there are a lot of issues that were in this audit that I know I've been talking about as a parent for 8 years. So to just kind of push that stuff aside, I feel like we're not really making any progress. We're just sweeping things under the rug yet again. So we can motion to close the meeting, but I don't know, the past 2 hours have been a total waste of time.
I disagree. We have to have a direction, and we're going in a direction. We're focusing on bullying, and I think that's very important, and we're going to have this ongoing conversation. I don't think that's a waste of time, with all due respect, Member Maxwell. What else do we have?
Is it fair to say that for the October 27th workshop meeting, to have a draft of this particular goal that will allow me the time with my team to structure something around this to present to you all on the 27th? That's our next workshop meeting. Our regular meeting is the 27th. A week and a half? Are we good? Is that fair? I mean, we have a lot of meetings happening, but for a regular meeting, I could present the goals again with this included in the actual goal sheet again, with some structure to talk to folks. Yes? Is that, yes, okay.
So are we saying that bullying is going to be the only additional goal?
No.
Okay, then, so I feel like, yeah, right, that's why I was asking.
So if this am I creating this and trying to create an actual goal with measurable structure and adding that to my already developed goals and adding others? Like, how
Bullying
many
is,
goals?
that's the next task force. That's going to be the next collective community issue that I think we need to get after as a community.
I also think we need to keep an understanding that not everything is a goal in the sense that it needs to be on the goals.
Right.
Everything in this packet we need to work on as a district, but not everything goes on your goals. You also have a job.
I think through the chair, I think you have immediate. Immediately, I think we have to, as a committee, focus on bullying and discipline, because that's crying out to us. So should be our focus, at least for me. That's what I want, because that shows it from every single school, okay? Then you have, like, again, you have your immediate and intermediate, and you have long-term. And some of this is dealing with budget that we're gonna be starting in January about. Some of it, it's policy, some of it's internally working with the teachers, or maybe even working with the state, because with the state, I'd love to have some more information on how the state helps with professional development. If someone wants to do independent onboarding of professional development, are there any incentive programs outside of us giving money? Maybe the teachers want to do something else, and they get monetary incentives. They can do independent onboarding on their own time. I think what it was they want to have that structure to be able to do, like, I hate to say, like, look at correcting papers or catching up on their lesson plans or
Planning.
something like, it's a
Planning with
difficult,
me
I
for
want to
planning.
make sure that we're working with the teachers, and we also have a partner with the state, that it's not complicated to do potentially onboarding with professional development. And maybe something we approach is, maybe there's monetary incentives for people to do certification and onboarding and professional development. I don't know. But I don't have the same knowledge as the administrators, but that's something maybe they can report back to us in a few weeks. I'm looking at the bottom of the barrel of major issues, the low marks collectively. Every single school that you looked at was obviously the budget no one is happy with, collectively, okay? We have to work, professional development, bullying, staff morale, and then a vision for the school system. I mean, that's kind of nebulous, but, but definitely, if I was gonna say three things, that's what beginning of this conversation, that's what I meant. Bullying, discipline, okay? Something we definitely have to tackle. Professional development, I would love to have that ongoing conversation, have a separate workshop on that. The staff morale, we knew that was a major issue. I know Member DeZaglia talking about the favoritism. That's been reflected. The sense of hopelessness from teachers, staff, parents, and students regarding bullying and discipline. So for me, and then also I want to make sure that we have some timetable for the survey to be replicated again, another second opportunity, another crack at the apple. That, to me, is action plans, but, I don't know what else to say besides that.
I'm totally on board with that, yeah.
So, I don't know if we could bring this back, but the mayor and I the mayor might remember this, how parents used to come in and they would bring like cards about different scenarios. It could be bullying, drugs. I don't know if you remember when they brought that when we were younger. And they would have us role play in how to interact with each other and different scenarios and how we treat each other, like bullying wise, etc. I just remember it was Kim Marino's mom and Dylan Fitzgerald's mom that did it for us. And that was great because we had parents coming in and teaching us how to interact with each other. And it was a program. I'll never forget the cards they would bring, and they would tell us the scenarios. Well, you will bully this child. And they would say, how would that make you feel if it was done? And it taught us little by little how do we solve problems. But it was done by parents. And I don't know, maybe that's something for the middle schools and lower schools we bring back, where parents that went through a program, again, they were trained. I remember they had to take classes for this to make sure that they were the right people to do this job. I wouldn't want some parents to be doing this job. But I would say that's something that maybe can be a counterpart to that bullying scenario, is bringing the parents involved and having them interact. I don't know. I just remember those little programs that we used to have growing up, which taught us about how to interact with each other and respect each other. And I feel like we need to stop bringing that back, like community involvement and involving in our schools. That's something maybe we can do by tackling this issue.
Member Maxwell?
Okay, so I wrote down some goals that I came up with, and I don't think that any of them in particular need to be implemented, but I thought I could maybe give you some for suggestions, and if you liked any, maybe you could use them. But I came up with the goals and then the action plans, but I won't go through the action plans unless you are interested. So one being strengthen school culture, leadership, and communication, improve PD relevance and effectiveness. 3, ensure safe and healthy and well-maintained facilities. 4, increase consistency in student discipline and bullying response. And by doing that, increase staff training on restorative practice by June 2026. Hold annual training on trauma-informed discipline practice and monitor data quarterly to ensure consistency. Number 5 was enhance family and community engagement. 6, expand mental health and counseling, because we heard a lot about mental health and licensed counselors that we need. And then 7, strengthen data-driven accountability and public reporting. Those are just a few that, looking through here, I know we were discussing your goals and you were looking for input from the committee, so I just threw together some. If you'd like my actions or anything with that, maybe we can chat after or whatever, but those are my suggestions that I
think there's opportunity for, because remember, I have 3 pretty solid goals for this strategy plan, right? So where some of what you just said could be infused into some of those as actions, because that was some of what I was trying to think of too when I added some of the items to like the communication, right? Like some of these, it can be added to what is already here, right? And so how do we do that so it makes sense, so that there's a focus for me as well on not to, because again, me having 10 goals, I might as well throw in the towel. I don't know, that's not feasible or reasonable. 4 goals, 5 goals, that's what is recommended. So it's how do we, and I agree, Member Shabila, I think you said it right, not everything has to be a goal, but if we're in agreement that some things are priorities for us, that's what you should tell me to move forward with, right? And if we're all in agreement, that for me is the easy, that's why I said the bullying one seems pretty unanimous, at this point that we need to create something. And I'm going to have to be the person to be the leader to create that, to try to figure out what we do with that, right? So I do see that as a goal. I see that as a goal on my goal. That makes sense to me. It needs to be focused on. Everybody needs to be involved. And you all agree that that is something we want to see movement, right?
Yeah.
So there might be some other places to add in and infuse some of the things you just said, if you want to share those with me.
Sure.
You know, some of the other, I mean, I can still create a draft to bring to the 27th with some things you share with me. Gives me a few more days to look at it. That makes sense. What? Social media, right? That, I mean, I hear the communication and just add some more ideas to like the social media. I think, right, the goals as is that we discussed a few weeks ago are a template, right? They're sort of the foundation, and we said that. We agreed that those have to be in there, right? We have the work to do with literacy and engagement and a focus on the finance, right? We have those. How do we infuse some of these other things that make sense to keep an eye on some level of specificity within those? Could be very helpful. So yes, please share those with me.
Yeah,
Okay.
great, thank you.
The other thing that I think that you had highlighted in this that I think we really do need to focus on is staff morale.
Yep.
And, you know, the program that celebrates staff accomplishments, recognizing staff members at least once a year. I think that's an important thing to add to your goals, because I think we really do need to figure out how to raise staff morale.
Yep. And that one might be on its own or infused. Haven't gotten that far yet, but.
Member Willett?
I think the operative word, I've used it in the past myself, and you highlighted it, was triage. That's the bullying discipline is absolutely universal. So that's something that we have something in a few weeks, like something that we can go ride with, I think absolutely. I think what Member Donovan and others talked about was a positive influence on social media. And I think even having YouTube, of having people voluntarily read, or maybe reaching out to people in basketball stars, we've had, you know, maybe we can reach out to that and maybe do something with that. I think Methuen Life, of having that profile, recognition of staff, maybe that will bolster the morale, incremental things like that, but the triage was the bullying discipline, I would say.
Member Donovan?
Okay, I feel ready.
No? All right. This is an ongoing conversation. All right. Do we have anything else for tonight? Do we have a motion? All right.
Second.
Motion to adjourn from Member Willett, second from Member DiZoglio. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Roughly a few minutes before 7 o'clock, we're adjourned.
Good night, Methuen.